28. May 1951. Bernauer Strasse, 41, Berlin. A man in a wool coat tightens the strap on a canvas satchel and writes a line he could not afford to say out loud. Yesterday they shot people for crossing lines here, he writes. Today they pay me to cross faster than the police can draw their maps. He signs the entry. Carl, W. The page is brown at the edges with dried coffee. The notebook smells faintly of damp plaster. That line is the mathematics of his city after the war. The arithmetic of hunger and borders. The calculus of a life that chews through rules and makes a new ledger out of what remains. He will carry coffee and cigarettes through a bombed courtyard in Mitte and step out in wedding, as if passing from one season to another. He will carry nylon stockings back the other way. He will pass in and out of apartments that the fronts belong to East Berlin and the back stairwells belong to East Berlin and the back stairwells belong to West. He will learn the rhythms of the city's new police, forces the way a tailor learns seams. But this story begins in a different year. It begins with rubble. Moos, May 1945, Berlin, Weissensee. The fighting has moved west. Every wall is a new grammar. Window frames open on nothing. A corner bakery is a bunker. The streetcar lines are hanging like clotheslines. A black and white photo in an occupation report will later caption a street in Pankow simply, rubble, women, cart. The women look taller because the ground is lower than it used to be. The Bundesarchiv will hold miles of these photographs. In some, there are faces looking back. In others, the eyes are not yet adjusted to light. Karl is 19. He has a swelling on his right forearm from where a brick caught him. He does not remember from what building, what street. If he is honest, he is also proud. He did not die in uniform. There is a small scar at his hairline from the winter before, when the air raid siren went silent in a way that meant it was not done. His father is missing somewhere near the Vistula. His mother is running messages to the women on their street, who have taken pickaxes to the iron bars that used to hold shutters in place. If the bars come free, they will be traded for a dress. If the dress, for potatoes. If the potatoes, for another day alive. The Red Army's tanks had come down Greifswalder Strasse, then pulled back, then came back harder. Men were pulled out to the Volkssturm and sent to ditches with rifles older than their fathers. The arithmetic of April is simple. If you are a man of certain age and you are seen, you are a soldier. If you go outside after dusk, you are a thief or a corpse. If you stay inside, you are a target. The last few days before surrender are in the record. A neighbor named Hannelore writes in a flimsy school dictionary she uses as a diary. We drink hot water and put a cube of bouillon in it and talk about mothers. She writes, they come through the courtyard, and the young ones are very young. The fear of retribution is specific. It has names. It has the sound of boots outside a stairwell door. It also has the sound of American voices 2 sectors west, the way rumor travels faster than bread. Somewhere in the west of the city, the Americans hand out chocolate. Somewhere near Treptow, a woman smashes a window to climb out of a cellar not her own. If this is retribution, one makeshift pastor says in a letter collected later by an Allied chaplain, then it is a retribution made by hands too many to count, and tongues that do not speak our language. 8 May 1945, the war ends in Europe. The next day there is no official end to the hunger. Food is numbers. Numbers are sentences. The mathematics of the immediate aftermath is recorded in an Allied intelligence summary for Berlin, June 1945. Estimated daily caloric ration 1,000 to 1,200 per person. If you are a manual laborer, you might get 1,400. If you are a child, less. The summary notes the unofficial reality. Additional foodstuffs procured through barter and illegal trade raise consumption but increase inequity of distribution. Carl becomes a runner. He can carry 2 sacks without stopping to rest. The women on the rubble teams, the Trümmerfrauen, are grateful for young arms. He trades in other currencies, promises, false teeth pulled from a cellar dentist's trunk, a Polish linen tablecloth with a burn hole the size of a candle wax strip. He learns how much a left shoe without a right is worth if the leather is still good. The city's systems begin again. The military commandant's office issues curfews, then loosens them, then enforces them again after a series of shootings at night. The French post printed notices on rough paper with municipal seals that survived the bombing. Achtung! Curfew 2,000 downed. Then 2,000 downed. Then 1,000 exceptions because a city cannot be run on a single time. Enforcement is as irregular as electricity. The Soviet patrols in the east are strict, except when they are not. The American military police roam in jeeps, and in some streets they are greeted as liberators, and in others as a source of cigarettes. The British drive lorries around the Brandenburg Gate and park them where there had been parades. There is an arithmetic to curfew. If you leave a half-hour early to cross the canal and the bridge is still intact, you can return with flour. If the bridge is gone tomorrow, your choices are different. A year later, the bridges make a new kind of sense. 1946. Ration cards are not just paper. They are identity. They are answer keys. The Office of Military Government, United States OM Gus, writes in an August 1946 report, "The ration card is the only barometer of fairness that most Berliners possess. Its value decreases with every rumor." Karl keeps his mother's cards in a tin. He keeps a forged set in a jar behind the stove. He knows 3 printers who can reproduce the tear-off tabs well enough to pass the glance of a tired clerk. Cigarettes become money. There are cigarettes issued as part of U.S. rations. There are cigarettes in care packages addressed to names pulled from hat boxes. There are cigarettes rolled from rough tobacco bought in sacks on the outskirts of the city, each of which will make 3 poor cigarettes and 2 that taste of mold. But the best are the American brands. Camel, Lucky Strike, Chesterfield. A pack is not a luxury, it is 20 units of purchase. A pack is the difference between the shoes you have and the ones you can resolve. A single cigarette is a glass of milk for a child that day. A British weekly report from January 1947 notes the invisible market. Transaction rates for American cigarettes have stabilized in the British sector at 15 RM per piece, unofficial. Stabilized is a misleading word. It moves daily. The numbers are like weather. The hunger winter of 1946 to 47 arrives like an ice shelf. The snow stays. Coal is rationed and then gone. The Tiergarten becomes a forest of stumps. The zoological garden is not a school trip. It is a source of fence pickets. A woman from Charlottenburg writes in her letter to a sister in Switzerland, "We chop up our childhoods to keep our children alive." Karl joins a gang of boys who screw rivets out of a derailed railcar at night and take them to a dealer with a connection to a foundry outside the city. He learns to break a rail tie quietly. He learns to listen for dogs. A German policeman on patrol. Already he is called something different. A municipal police, JVA 5, sees them and looks away. The policeman is on his 3rd night of no heat. The policeman's brother returns from a Soviet camp and his bones. Allied patrols changed the tone. American and British MPs chase them away and sometimes confiscate their haul. Soviet patrols take the rivets and tell them to run. The mathematics of fear is also the mathematics of relief. You can do what you have to do as long as you are not unlucky that night. There is a document from a Berlin police station, wedding, March 1947, that records the arrest of K. Asian W., day laborer, age 21, for possession of 7 packs of Camel cigarettes and 2 small sacks of coffee, no purchase papers. KW is released the next day. The record is stamped in violet ink and signed by a man who is reinstated from a desk job he had under the old government. In a career file in the Landesarchiv, that man's denazification file shows a category VV, Mitläufer, follower. He writes, "My membership was forced. I have always been apolitical." A neighbor writes a Persilschein, a whitewashing affidavit. "He helped me when my husband was away." The basic ledger is unbalanced because it is built on favors. Denazification is a paperwork campaign that tries to render moral difference as bureaucratic categories. The Fragebogen, the questionnaire, has 131 questions. Were you a member of the NSDAP? When? Were you a block warden? Did you attend a rally? Did you attend a rally and clap? The Spushkammern, the tribunals, assign categories: Hauptschuldig, major offenders; Belasteti offenders, minder belastet; lesser offenders, Mitläufer followers; and Entlasteti exonerated. This mathematics of guilt, the arithmetic that maps past, acts to new consequences, runs through the years with an uneven hand. Of approximately 3.6 million cases in the US zone, the majority are classified as Mitläufer or Entlastet. Punishments are inconsistent. A teacher who reported a colleague in 1937 spends 6 months in a camp and later returns to teach Latin in Nukulen. The man who received the report keeps his job throughout and says it was a misunderstanding. A clerk who signed transport documents for foreign laborers is suspended, then reinstated because he is the only one who knows how to make the system work. A small number, the spectacularly cruel and the unlucky, are jailed. Karl's file is thin. He was in the Hitler Youth. He was in a flak unit as a helper. He did not serve at the front. He writes, "I was a child of my time." It is a sentence that erases more than it reveals. His Spushkammer hearing is brief. He is classified Mitläufer. He is allowed to work. The same paper becomes his admission ticket to a new life and to another kind of silence. The city is filled with displaced persons. The term covers many kinds of people: Jews who survived camps and hiding, Poles who were dragged to Berlin to work in factories, Soviet prisoners of war whose return home is uncertain and sometimes lethal. They live in displaced persons camps, administered by the Allies and by the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, then by the International Refugee Organization. In Zehlendorf, in the American sector, the camp at Dupel is a city within the city. There are schools, a theater, newspapers in Yiddish and Polish. There are black markets, too. There is joy in marriages and births after horror. There is rage and grief behind guarded gates. Karl trades there because everyone trades. He carries coffee and cigarettes out and nylons in. He sees the numbers on forearms. He pretends not to see when he must. He looks too long when he does. He is ashamed, and then he is not. He is ashamed again. He writes later in a notebook that survives, "They looked through me. I was in front of them. They did not look at me. I was in front of them. They did not look at me." DPs sell American goods at rates Berliners cannot understand. A DP officer writes in an Allied report that civilian Germans attempting to enter DP camps are to be turned away. Exceptions may be made for delivery of goods necessary to camp operations. Exceptions are made for bread and butter. Exceptions are made for flesh. Exceptions are made for flesh. Exceptions are made for everything, because the war did not end for everyone at the same time. On the eastern edges of the city, and in the towns of the west, another movement is underway. From Königsberg, from Silesia, from the Sudetenland, from East Prussia, from villages whose names will be forgotten by the grandchildren of the people who arrive with suitcases tied with rope, millions of Germans are expelled and forced west. The numbers are staggering. 12 million, perhaps 14. They arrive with mutilated German and with Polish and Czech swears they learned as children on the wrong side of the new border. They have nothing but stories, and sometimes those stories are rebutted by documents no one has. The arithmetic of rooms becomes diabolical. A town of 10,000 in Hesse receives 3,000 newcomers. Apartments are already crowded. A two-room flat that held a family of 5 now holds 2 more. A public order, posted by the Burgermeister, instructs residents to list spare beds. There are mandates to Einquartierung, billeting that echo war and peacetime. The locals resent the intrusions. The newcomers resent being called mouths. There are fights over hairbrushes and stoves. In a village near Kassel, a woman from the Sudetenland writes, "They think we brought this. We think they hoarded. We all are wrong and right." The Federal Republic will pass the Lastenausgleichsgesetz in 1952, the equalization of burdens law, that taxes those who lost less to compensate those who lost more. It is a ledger that tries to write justice in numbers. It mostly calms but does not settle. The associations of expellees, the Landsmannschaften, will march and put up signs with names of lost towns. School children will carry banners under what used to be street names. The memory maps change. School books teach the geography of loss while eliding other geographies. By 1947, something else has shifted in Karl. The black market is not a side income, it is a system. It is also a vocabulary. He says Sheba, and everyone knows what that is. He learns the routes that pass under the radar of the 4 powers. In 1948, the question of money becomes a question of sovereignty. A Marshall Plan shipment arrives at Tempelhof. The crates carry Uncle Sam labels and contain powdered milk, flour, canned beef, machinery parts. The European Recovery Program. This is its formal name. The formal name does not capture what it feels like when a crate splinters open, revealing tins that taste like a country one has not seen. There is a photograph taken by an American Air Force photographer of a line of Berliners, their coats buttoned up, walking past pallets of sacks. The caption says, "ERP Shipments, Berlin, 1948. You can count those sacks as futures. Each sack is a meal. Each pallet is an apartment block that will be rebuilt 2 or 3 years sooner than otherwise. The mathematics of aid is not just charity, it is strategy. The Americans talk about markets and communism. Political speeches turn into wheat shipments and into screwdrivers. Words become calories, become hours of electricity, become a toaster, become a man returning home to a house with heat for the first time in years. Berliners learned to talk about geopolitics the way they used to talk about streetcar line numbers. The currency reform of the Western zones arrives on 20 June 1948. The old Reichsmark is replaced with the Deutsche Mark. The records show the exchange rate, small amounts of cash exchanged at a rate of 1,001 up to 40 RM per person, larger amounts at 10,001, savings at 10,001, wages at 20,001, wages at 1. There are arguments about who is hurt and who is spared. There are sighs of relief from those with little to lose and grimaces from those whose mattresses deflate. There is a quiet thrill when shop windows fill overnight with goods that had been hidden. Ludwig Erhard, a man few Berliners could pick out of a lineup then, has pushed the policy that will make his name. There is a radio address. There is a phrase, Soziale Marktwirtschaft, social market economy, that will feel like a hymn and a threat depending on where one sits. The Soviets counter with their own reform in their zone. using stamped Reichsmarks first, then the East German mark, the Mark der Deutschen Notenbank, later Me, and then the road is cut. The blockade starts on 24 June 1948. The Soviet administration closes road, rail, and canal routes to the western sectors. The mathematics of the city flips again. The sky becomes the highway. The Berlin airlift begins. American C-47s and C-54s, British Avro Yorks and Dakotas, Royal Australian and Canadian planes fly in coal and food. The time slots are measured in minutes. The pilots call Tempelhof's approach the corridor, as if they are in a narrow apartment hallway in a bombed-out tenement. Children learn the rhythm of planes the way they learn the rhythm of sirens. Karl watches the planes too. He watches his city become an idea. He also watches for opportunities. The sector borderlines, the Sektorengrenzen, exist on maps. They are not yet the walls of the future. They cross streets like a drunk man's path. They cross through courtyards and cellars. A house can have a front door in Soviet Berlin and a back fence in the French sector. The border guards do not stand in apartments. The police do not know every alley. They create maps. Karl creates routes faster. He carries coffee from a warehouse in Wedding, coffee that came in on a plane, coffee that passed through hands that all took their cut. A quarter for an American soldier whose girlfriend told him where to look. A quarter for the German warehouse guard who has a family. A quarter for the driver. A quarter for Karl and those who help him carry. The coffee is not spoiled by being touched by many hands. It accumulates stories and profit. He cuts it with chicory to stretch it. He knows how far he can dilute before his customers become angry. He carries cigarettes. He carries nylon stockings, those strange shimmering tubes that make women feel like photographs. He carries penicillin sometimes because doctors will treat without asking and because his neighbor's child had pneumonia last winter. He learns which times to cross Bernauer Strasse. There is a photograph that will become famous 10 years later of people jumping into the West from windows on that street. Now there is only motion. Karl knows a building at number 41 where the front door opens onto Mitte, but the rear gate leads to a yard whose fence can be kicked out. He knows a building on Gartenstrasse where the third-floor hall has a hole that leads to the next building's attic. He navigates by cracks. He learns the shifts of the Volkspolizei and the French gendarmes. He learns their faces. He learns to greet them by name when that will help and to walk past them when that is safer. He knows when an American jeep will linger because an MP is flirting with a girl at a window. He knows that there is a British sergeant who has a weak spot for chess, a man who will talk 5 minutes about the Sicilian defense, while a large sack does not move at all behind a door. He writes in his notebook the day he makes the run in under 9 minutes from one courtyard to another. It is not daring, he writes, it is counting. Count the steps, count the minutes, count the faces. Count how many cigarettes you can lose and still make it make sense. Allied intelligence summaries talk about the black market with the same tone they use to talk about troop movements. The unauthorized movement of goods across sector boundaries remains at critical levels. An OMG-US report notes in December 1948. Particular attention to coffee, tobacco, and medical supplies. East German police reports, preserved in the Bundesarchiv and in later Stasi files, describe organized smuggler bands operating in Mitte and Prenzlauer Berg. The word organized is an accusation and an aspiration. Many of these bands are two friends and a borrowed cart. The arithmetic of smuggling is vanishingly simple. East wants what West has and cannot afford. West wants what East has and does not count: coal, labor, furniture, taken from offices of institutions that no longer exist. Karl carries goods west-east and carries something else east-west: money. It is not minor when he carries rumors either. He carries letters. He carries a child once, a cousin of a friend, sleeping in a laundry basket. He does not tell that story to anyone outside his notebook. The child is passed up and over stair landings by 5 pairs of hands that belong to women who never learned to speak to each other again. The blockade ends on 12 May 1949. The air corridors quiet. The trains begin to run. The city remains lopsided. The Federal Republic is formed in Bonn on 23 May 1949. The German Democratic Republic is declared on 7 October 1949. There are 2 Germanys in the world now. There are 3 if you count the one that lives in courtyards. Karl receives a job offer he does not expect. A man he knows from the warehouses, a man who used to be a foreman at AEG before the war and who is now something like a manager in the wedding plant of another company, asks him to come to work. "You know where things move," the man says. The man's denazification file is a page and a half long. He is a Mitläufer. He is valuable. The new democracy's engines need oil, and the oil is not just petroleum. It is knowledge of who can be trusted to deliver under pressure. Karl tries it. He works a morning shift at a rebuild factory assembling small motors for sewing machines. He eats thick slices of bread at the break. He feels the relief of earning wages that come with a stamp and a place on a payroll page. He also feels the itch in his hands when he hears the whistle blow for lunch and knows that 3 blocks away, a man is paying a high price for coffee because his sister back east is sick. He tells himself that he will work for 3 months and see. He lasts 2 and returns to his roots. A police interrogation report from the Berlin Police, Department for Economic Crimes, July 1950, shows an interview with a KW laborer regarding suspicion of the unauthorized transport of goods across the sector boundary. The transcript is a page long. He denies the allegations, the officer writes. He states that he is only a courier for a firm he declines to name. Without further evidence, release is recommended. The officer asked for his opinion writes, "He is known to us. He is careful. He works the boundary but does not flaunt it. We have larger fish." On the other side of the line, in the files of the Ministry for State Security, newly formed as of February 1950, there is not yet a thick dossier on Karl because it is early. There is, perhaps later, a note in a Gedachte in Christianstelle Mitte. Watch for courier on Benauer Straucher, thin, wears cap, possible liaison to American warehouses. The possible becomes a fact in the file after one more rumor. The file sits under a coffee cup ring on a desk in Normannenstraucher. The politics of the city's new governments turn memory into policy. Denazification becomes amnesty and restitution. In 1949 and 1954, amnesty laws let many who had been erased return to their posts. The 31er Gazettes of 1951, the law for the regulation of the legal titles of public servants, not definitively appointed, restores pensions and positions for many civil servants of the old regime. The mathematics of stability trumps the arithmetic of guilt. The scales tilt. The same men who managed the old power managed the new telephones. The records show how many. A technical school teacher in Wedding who wore a party pin now tutors apprentices in electric wiring. He remains a man who teaches boys how to turn power on and off. Karl's sister marries an expellé from Silesia who makes furniture out of shipping crates. He is careful with his hands. He is proud. He stands in line at a government office for his share of Lastenausgleich and says little. He is quicker to laugh than many men who lived through these years. He holds grudges anyway. The school books change slowly. The first editions after the war leave spaces where maps should be. A teacher in Karl's neighborhood uses a war map with borders drawn with chalk that can be erased as the foreign ministers meet. The lessons emphasize German suffering, the nights in cellars as bombs fell, the lost homes in the East, the hunger. It is not false, but it is incomplete. There is a chapter called The Time of Misfortune that uses the passive voice. There is a section on the camps that lists facts without faces. There is a film shown to adults in 1945 by Allied officers, Die Todesmehlen, the death mills, showing the corpses at Bergen-Belsen, the ash in the ovens at Buchenwald. Some in the audience close their eyes, some leave, some watch with hard faces and say nothing for 30 years. Karl watches in 1945. He tells himself he knows nothing. He tells himself he knows enough. He tells himself that to live you must have selective memory like a surgeon has selective fingers. He is wrong and also right. 1950 and 1951 are good years if you are measuring in shop window displays. Berliners can buy shoes again. The tram runs on schedule more days than not. There are cinema posters for Heimatfilme with titles like The Forest is Our Life and pictures of mountains no one in Wedding has seen. The economic miracle, the Wirtschaftswunder, is a phrase just then being born. It feels like the opposite of bomb shrapnel. It feels like butter after margarine. It feels like the first day in May when the park is green again after years of grey. It also feels like the city making an agreement with its past. Keep quiet and we will keep moving. Karl is very good at keeping quiet. He writes in his notebook but does not speak. He knows a man in Mitte whose brother is a policeman and whose other brother drives a truck for a food company. The human map of Berlin is an overlay of brothers. Those brothers keep the boundary from being a barrier. They also police it when told. People are not consistent. It saves the city and condemns it to another cycle of forgetfulness. 31. March 1951. Karl writes, "If I am caught with 2 sacks, I am a thief. If I am caught with 7, I am a businessman." He knows that his best protection is to be useful to men in uniform. A French gendarme in Wedding takes 2 packs from him one evening. 2 nights later, returns 1 pack with an apology handed over with a shrug. "C'est la vie," the gendarme says. The phrase is a philosophical Swiss army knife. It cuts many things. There are moments when the border turns violent. There is a shooting on Friedrichstrasse in October 1951. An East German policeman fires at a man who runs. The man falls and then gets up because he has been shot at before. He runs into the path of a tram. He dies not from a bullet, but from the weight of a city in motion. The newspapers report it without flourishes. They list where the blood fell as if giving directions. Karl hears the shot from 2 streets away and stays where he is. He learns from this. He learns that on some nights the best mathematics is subtraction. Subtract yourself from the place where the news will be made. Subtract your satchel from the inventory of a curious man's hands. Subtract a route from your repertoire for a week until everyone forgets what they thought they saw. A mother from the eastern side writes in her diary in April 1951 that she met the coffee man in the courtyard again. He is thin and does not look me in the eye. He is also my lifeline. I hate this time and love that my child eats. The sentence could be in any person's diary that year. Hate is a luxury. Love is a ration. The bureaucratic mind is offended by borders that move. The police draw maps. The cartographers of the urban battle line sit with pencils and mark who controls which doorway. They are behind the reality. Then they invent reality. Then the smugglers adjust. This is the game. It is not even a game. It is the way a city amplified in its contradictions runs. The black market is a paradox machine. It provides life in the absence of law and undermines the law that in normal times makes life predictable. The mathematics of the black market is the mathematics of an insurance policy. You buy it against a future collapse. You sell it because you have to. An occupation report from the British High Commission in March 1952 states, with a careful tone, it is not feasible to extinguish the black market without producing further hardship. Efforts should prioritize organized crime and the movement of restricted commodities. The phrase organized crime is a stand-in for anything that is not a starving mother with a baby. It is one of the many euphemisms that make bureaucrats sleep at night. June 17, 1953. The East German Uprising. It starts with construction workers on the Stalin Alley, now Karl Marx Alley, asked to do more for fewer marks. They walk out. They march to the House of the Ministries. They chant, "Down with the quotas." It becomes free elections. So quickly that there is suspicion about who begins the chant. It spreads like a rumor from bricklayer to S-Bahn engineer to typist. It is real. It is also doomed with Soviet tanks. Karl watches from the western side as crowds surge. He has carried coffee to some of these men. He has carried news of shop openings in the West to their wives. Now he carries nothing. He stands. He sees tanks. He hears shots that sound different than they used to. He hears them with an adult's ear that has retuned to peace and is not as calloused. An Allied intelligence summary written that evening reads, "Demonstrations in East Berlin suppressed by Soviet forces." It reads in the vehicle of understatement. A doctor in the Charité hospital writes in a letter the next day, later preserved in an oral history at the Free University, "We treated 30 men with gunshot wounds. They were carpenters, bricklayers, apprentices. All of them wanted to go home that evening. Some do. Some do not. The Stasi files grow thicker after that week. The border becomes more policed. It is not yet a wall. It is a line with muscle. It is a place where more men in uniforms gather." Karl feels the new pressure. He is questioned twice in 1954, once by West Berlin police, once by a man who does not give his name in a grey stairwell in Mitte. He asks for names. Karl says none. Karl learns that silence is portable. He makes a decision in 1955. He takes the job at the warehouse. He leaves the nightly runs to younger men and to men less visible. He becomes a foreman. He sits at a desk. He signs for shipments from Bremen that came through the canal and are loaded into trucks. He says the words, "Under the Marshall Plan we received," as if he is explaining to a child why a cake rises. He goes to Notaufnahmelager Marienfelde, the emergency reception camp, in 1957 with a friend whose wife and son have come across a dangerous path from the east. He watches them sit through interrogations by Allied officers and German officials about their lives to establish that their reasons are valid. He watches them be asked questions that are akin to the questions of the denazification forms. He sees the same tone, administrative compassion, suspicion, exhaustion. The mathematics of bureaucracy reduces motives to letters in boxes within seconds. The expellees of 1945-50 are now settled enough to be neighbors. They run clubs, hold commemorations, publish newspapers for people from Katowice and Breslau, now called something else. The DPs have largely left. Those who stayed are neighbors too, often quiet, often invisible, sometimes changing their names to endure. The empty spaces left by Jews in the city are rarely mentioned in the speeches. There is a plaque here and there. There are stones in the pavement in decades to come. In the 1950s, the voids do not yet have a language that most can hear. Karl's notebooks become less frantic. He writes about his salary. He writes about his mother's recipes. He writes about the cinema. He writes in 1958, "We watch the bridge and cry when the boys die." He writes, "We cry for what we lost and for what we did not dare to see." He writes nothing that exonerates. He writes nothing that exonerates. He writes nothing that condemns. He writes that survival requires rearranging memory. He argues with himself on the page. In 1961, the wall goes up. The courtyards close. Bernauer Strasse becomes a stage for tragedies with pictures. Men who would have jumped in 1951 now face barbed wire in August. Women in early 1962 throw mattresses out of windows and jump onto them. Some miss. A photograph of a child passed through barbed wire in a courtyard. Small hands grasped and pulling becomes an icon. Carl goes to the border that first day with a heavy heart and no satchel. He does not cry. He feels a door closing somewhere inside, a door that had not been opened for years in any real way. He knows what it means to live with walls, and we